"Stop!" he commanded, his voice a ragged, desperate whisper that barely cut through the tension suffocating the room. "This is dangerous, Chloe." His words were a flimsy shield against the storm I had been brewing for months. I saw the conflict warring in his eyes, the deep-set lines of a man torn between duty and a desire he was terrified to name. But I had come too far to be deterred by a whisper. I ignored him, closing the final inch between us, and pressed my lips to his. For a heart-stopping second, he was rigid, a statue of resistance. Then, with a shudder that seemed to rack his entire body, he kissed me back. In that kiss, the world tilted on its axis. In the very house where I once played with dolls, in the very room where I once begged for bedtime stories to stave off the monsters under my bed, I had become the monster, and I had just devoured my own fairy tale. Hey everyone, before we dive deep into this, I need to put a warning out there. This story is heavy, it's complex, and it explores some of the darkest corners of a family's life. If you're new here, please make sure you subscribe and like the video. This is a difficult journey, and I need to know you're here with me. If you're ready to face this, press 1 in the comments below. My kingdom wasn't forged from ancient stone and ivy-covered towers. It was a gleaming fortress of glass and steel, nestled in the opulent heart of Greenwich, Connecticut. My parents, Marcus and Eleanor, were the architects of my perfect world. Marcus, my father, was a titan in the world of finance, a man who commanded boardrooms with the same quiet intensity he commanded our lives. Eleanor, my mother, was the perfect counterpart, a society queen, her life a meticulously curated calendar of charity galas, yoga retreats, and luncheons with other women of her stature. Together, they built me a gilded cage. Our house was a testament to their success, gleaming hardwood floors that reflected the recessed lighting like dark water. Exquisite designer furnishings that were more art than furniture, and a walk-in closet for me that was larger than most New York City apartments. Life wasn't just a feast. It was an endless, overflowing banquet served on a silver platter just for me. The latest iPhone appeared on my nightstand before I even knew I wanted it. A new convertible, cherry red, was waiting in the driveway on my 17th birthday. Vacations were spontaneous, luxurious trips to St. Bart's or Aspen. I never had to strive, to want, to work for anything. A well-timed smile, a strategically deployed pout, was all it took to make the world and everyone in it bend to my will. This sense of absolute power was intoxicating. It started young. I remember being in middle school, effortlessly turning a group of girls against the one who had dared to wear the same shoes as me. I felt no remorse, only a cold, thrilling satisfaction as I watched her eat lunch alone for a week. In high school, boys were just pawns in a game I always won. I could have any of them, but the chase was the only interesting part. Once they were devoted, they were boring. This was my nature. I saw what I wanted, and I took it. There was no line I wouldn't cross. I think, even back then, a part of me knew that this philosophy would eventually extend to the one person who should have been untouchable. I think, perhaps, that was the beginning of it all, the insidious thought that I could possess anyone, anything, even him. At home, this dynamic took on a darker, more dangerous hue as I grew older. My father, Marcus, was a man carved from a different, more classical era. He possessed a timeless allure, tall and broad-shouldered, with powerful arms from his college rowing days, and a voice that was a captivating blend of gravel and velvet. He carried the scent of expensive cologne and quiet victory. When I was a little girl, he was my hero. He would twirl me around in the grand foyer, his laughter echoing off the marble, declaring me his girl. I would bury my face in the crisp fabric of his shirt, feeling utterly safe and adored. But after I turned 18, the texture of his affection changed. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible at first, like a shadow lengthening in the late afternoon. His hugs began to linger a fraction of a second too long, his hands resting on my waist with a new, unsettling weight. It no longer felt like he was just holding his daughter. It felt like he was holding a woman. I started to notice things, cataloging them in a secret part of my mind. The way his eyes would follow me as I walked to the pool in my bikini. The way his gaze would drop to my legs when I wore shorts. The way his hand, when passing me a glass at the dinner table, would brush against mine, sending a jolt of something forbidden between us. He never explicitly crossed the line, but the air around us became charged, thick with unspoken possibilities. An invisible, high-stakes game had begun, and it seemed I was the only one who knew all the rules. My mother remained blissfully, almost willfully ignorant. Eleanor lived in a world of surfaces, of appearances. Her love for me was genuine but distant, expressed through gifts and opportunities rather than time and attention. She trusted me completely, which was her first mistake. Her second, and far more fatal mistake, was trusting her husband. As her social calendar grew more demanding, the house became my dominion. More and more often, it was just the two of us, existing in the quiet, cavernous space, the tension between us, a living, breathing entity. I decided to stop waiting for him to make a move. I would force his hand. I began a calculated campaign of subtle seduction. I'd parade around in short silk robes, letting one fall open just a little as I passed his study. I'd accidentally walk in on him changing in his master suite, feigning embarrassment while my eyes drank in the sight of his bare chest. I'd lean over him at the dinner table, supposedly to get the salt, ensuring my shirt gapped open to offer him a view. Each time I would watch him, analyze him. I saw the way his jaw would clench, the way his knuckles would turn white as he gripped his fork. He would clear his throat, his gaze snapping away. But I had seen it, the flicker of fire he was trying so desperately to extinguish. He was fighting it, and that made me want him even more. The first major offensive happened on a Tuesday night. Eleanor was at a charity auction. I waited until I heard the shower running in his bathroom. Then I slipped into his bedroom and pulled one of his classic white button-down shirts from his closet. I took off my own clothes and put it on. It smelled of him, that mix of cedar, clean cotton, and Marcus. The scent was intoxicating. I walked into the living room where he was sitting on the sofa, a glass of whiskey in his hand, a financial report open on his lap. I pretended to be looking for a book on the shelf behind him. I felt his eyes on me, a burning heat on my bare legs. I turned around slowly. "Can't find it," I said with a shrug, acting as if my state of undress was the most natural thing in the world. He stared at me, his face unreadable for a moment. Then the mask of the stoic father slammed back into place. "Chloe, for God's sake, go put some clothes on." "Why?" I asked, tilting my head. I walked closer, perching on the arm of the sofa. "Is this bothering you?" His body went rigid. He didn't answer. He just stared into his whiskey as if it held the secrets of the universe. Then, with a sudden, violent motion, he stood up, placed his glass on the table with a loud clink, and strode out of the room without another word. I heard his bedroom door click shut down the hall. I sat there in the silent room, the scent of his whiskey hanging in the air, a triumphant smile spreading across my face. He had fled, he was weak, I was winning. My second attempt was more intimate. A few weeks later, Eleanor was away for a weekend spa retreat she'd been planning for months. The house was ours. The stage was set. I dimmed the lights in the den, put on some soft jazz, and opened a bottle of expensive Cabernet he particularly loved. I feigned helplessness with the new smart TV, calling him in to help. "Dad, I can't get this thing to work," I whined, pouting. He came in, a cautious look on his face. He fiddled with the remote, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was standing close, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I leaned in, pretending to look at the screen. "Oh, I see," I said, my hair brushing against his arm. He flinched but didn't move away. He eventually got the movie playing, some forgettable action flick. We sat on the large leather couch, a respectable distance between us. As I refilled his wine glass, I let my fingers deliberately trail across the back of his hand. It was like a static shock. He pulled his hand back as if he'd been burned. Halfway through the movie, I feigned a shiver. "It's so cold in here," I murmured, and slid closer to him, tucking my legs underneath me. I eventually rested my head on his shoulder. I could feel every muscle in his body tense up. His breathing was shallow. He was a tightly coiled spring of conflict. "You've had too much to drink, Chloe," he whispered, his voice strained. "No, I haven't," I whispered back, looking up at him through my lashes. "I'm perfectly fine." For a moment, I thought he would give in. His eyes softened, his gaze dropping to my lips. The air crackled, but then the mask snapped back on. He shot up from the couch so quickly it made me jump. "I'm going to bed," he announced, and practically ran from the room. A second failure, but I knew he was unraveling. The spring was about to break. The third time was the charm. It was a serene Sunday morning. Eleanor was at her lengthy church service, a 3-hour affair. I knew Marcus was in his den, absorbed in the Sunday paper. This time, there would be no pretense, no games. Only the raw truth. I stripped down to a delicate, see-through lace bra and matching underwear. I walked into the den holding a fresh cup of coffee for him. "Good morning," I said, my voice a sultry purr. He looked up from his paper and his jaw went slack. His eyes, wide with shock, traveled over my body, lingering on my breasts, my stomach, my thighs. A dark flush crept up his neck. He quickly shut his eyes as if the sight physically pained him and took a deep, shaky breath. "Go. Get dressed, now," he bit out, each word a piece of gravel. I just smiled. I walked toward him and placed the coffee on the table beside him. I leaned in close, my hair tickling his cheek. "Why, Daddy?" I whispered. "Don't you like the view?" His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "I am your father," he ground out. "You didn't answer my question," I persisted, and then I did the unthinkable. I sat down on his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. He froze, a strangled sound escaping his throat. He grabbed my arms to push me away, but his grip was weak, his resolve crumbling. For the first time, he didn't run. He didn't escape. He just sat there, trembling, defeated by the sheer force of my will. The silence in the room screamed with everything that was about to happen. I knew with absolute certainty that I had won. 3 days later, the final barrier didn't just crumble, it was obliterated. Eleanor was at another of her endless charity dinners. I was in the kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, making a midnight snack when he walked in. He wore only a silk robe, loosely tied, his hair tousled from sleep or restlessness. "You should be in bed," he said, his voice quiet. "So should you," I replied, my gaze locked on his. He walked toward me until he was standing just inches away. The air was electric, thick with a year of unspoken tension and forbidden desire. We just stood there, breathing each other's air, our eyes saying everything our mouths couldn't. And then, slowly, as if in a trance, he reached out, his hand cupping my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. He leaned in and kissed me. It was a kiss of utter surrender. It was hesitant, desperate, and full of a terrible, beautiful anguish. It tasted of whiskey and regret and a hunger that had been starved for too long. Once that line was crossed, there was no concept of return. That night, he led me not to his bed, but to the living room couch, the neutral territory where we had played out our Cold War. There, under the soft glow of a single lamp, he made me his. In the darkness, I was no longer his daughter, Chloe. I was his woman, his secret, his sin. The next morning was a study in silence. We didn't speak of it, didn't acknowledge it. But when our eyes met over the breakfast table, a silent, binding contract was signed between us, a shared glance of shame, excitement, and conspiracy. I thought perhaps it would be a one-time, catastrophic mistake, but I was wrong. Once you taste something so utterly forbidden, everything else in your life tastes like ash. That first night was a cataclysm that reordered my entire universe. It awakened a ravenous beast inside both of us. We had not just crossed a line, we had burned the entire map. Instead of retreating, we plunged deeper into our shared darkness. The clandestine encounters became our new reality. I would sneak into his room in the dead of night, a ghost moving through the sleeping house. The thrill of it was a drug, especially on the nights Eleanor was sleeping just down the hall, oblivious. The danger was the point. My power over him was absolute, and I reveled in it. I became an expert in the art of keeping him. I studied him, learned his every desire. I wore the deep blues and charcoals he favored. I learned to cook his favorite steak, searing it to a perfect medium rare for him on nights when Eleanor ordered a salad. I would laugh at his jokes with a brightness that made his eyes sparkle. I would sit on his lap in the den, pretending to scroll through my phone, while my hand subtly stroked the inside of his thigh. One afternoon, feeling particularly bold, I left a dark, possessive hickey on the side of his neck. He panicked, his face paling. He spent 20 minutes in the bathroom, expertly applying Eleanor's most expensive concealer to hide the mark. When she asked about the faint bruise later, he mumbled a clumsy lie about bumping into a cabinet door. She accepted it, but I saw a new flicker of suspicion in her eyes. She was a lioness who was slowly realizing there might be a predator in her den. She just hadn't identified it yet. She began to change. Her trips became less frequent. She started asking more questions about my day, about his day. Her gaze would linger on us when we were in the same room, a sharp, analytical look that made my skin prickle. She could feel the tectonic plates of our family shifting beneath her feet, but she couldn't see the magma boiling just below the surface. I have to pause here. Can you feel the walls closing in? The air is getting so thick you can barely breathe. It's a house of cards, and the slightest breeze will bring it all down. If you're still with me on this insane journey, make sure you've subscribed. Let's see this through to the horrifying end. The carelessness that comes with comfort became our undoing. We got sloppy. One Sunday afternoon, we returned from a trip to the local market, laughing about a private joke we'd shared in the car. As we walked into the house, I, without thinking, slipped my hand into his. It was a natural, intimate gesture. Too natural, too intimate. Eleanor was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. She didn't say a word. She just watched us, her eyes narrowing, her face a mask of cold comprehension. She saw it. The casual possessiveness, the easy familiarity, she knew. And in that moment, I knew that she knew. The game had changed. The Cold War was over. A direct conflict was imminent. That night, my father came into my room. He didn't storm in. He entered like a ghost, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He was fully dressed, and he kept his distance, perching on the edge of my desk chair. His face was ashen. "She knows," he said, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how much, but she knows something is deeply wrong." He ran a hand through his hair. "This has to stop, Chloe. It has to end." Tonight, I felt a surge of cold fury, not fear. After everything, after I had won, was he really going to retreat? I stood up from my bed and walked toward him. "Is that what you really want?" I asked softly. I knelt before him, placing my hands on his knees, looking up into his tortured eyes. "Or is that what you think you should want?" I leaned in, my fingers tracing a light pattern on his thigh. "She can't make you happy, you know that, but I can." I challenged him with my gaze. "You have to choose, Daddy, her or me. Choose a side." He looked at me, his face a battlefield of emotions. I saw the man he was supposed to be, the husband, the father, battling the man he had become, my lover, my conspirator. He didn't say a word, but he didn't leave. He stayed in my room that night, and in the silence, he made his choice. He chose me. The final confrontation happened the next morning. It began with an unnerving silence. When I came downstairs, Dad was already in the kitchen, nervously stirring a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. The spot at the table where Eleanor always sat with her morning tea was starkly empty. The entire house felt like it was holding its breath. Then I saw her. She was sitting on the sofa in the living room, perfectly still, wearing a simple dress, her hands clasped in her lap. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her face was a pale, spectral mask. "Sit down, Chloe," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. It was more terrifying than if she had been screaming. I shot a glance at Dad. He looked like a trapped animal. I, on the other hand, felt a surge of adrenaline. The final battle. I walked confidently into the room and sat in the armchair across from her, crossing my legs. "The truth," she began, her eyes boring into me. "I want to know all of it." I decided to play dumb one last time. "What truth, Mom?" "Don't," she snapped, a flash of fire in her dead eyes. "Don't you dare play innocent with me. Do you think I'm a fool? I see the way you look at him. I see the way his eyes follow you. I smell your perfume on his clothes. I found your hair on his pillow." Her voice began to tremble with rage. She turned her laser-like gaze on my father, who flinched. "Vera has not been in that bedroom for years." She looked back at me, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "Are you sleeping with your father?" The world stopped. The coffee mug slipped from Dad's nerveless fingers and shattered on the tile floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent house. I tilted my head, a slow, cruel smile forming on my lips. "Do you want me to lie to you?" That was all she needed. The last bit of hope in her eyes died. "Why?" she whispered, the word a puff of air. "He is your father. He is your husband," I retorted, my voice cold and sharp. "A fire you let die out a long time ago. I just gave him the warmth you couldn't." The slap was fast and sharp. My cheek stung, the print of her hand burning my skin. But I didn't flinch. I just laughed. "There she is." "I was wondering where you were." Tears finally streamed down her face. She turned her broken gaze to my father. "How long?" she shrieked, the sound tearing from her throat. "How long?" He just buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with silent sobs. "Months," she gasped, stumbling back as if he had physically struck her. Months. This house. My family. You. She looked from his crumpled form to my defiant face. You have ruined everything. She suddenly started laughing, a high, unhinged sound that was more terrifying than her tears. An hour later, she came down the stairs, pulling 2 large suitcases. Dad scrambled to his feet. Vera, don't. We can fix this. She gave him one last long look, filled with a decade of love and a universe of pain. The choice has been made, she said quietly. Then her empty, hollow eyes found me. You are not mine, she whispered, and she walked out the front door, closing it softly behind her, leaving a silence that was louder than any explosion. The immediate aftermath was a hollow victory. The house, finally ours, felt vast and empty. The silence was a physical presence, pressing in on us. Dad was a ghost. He moved through the rooms without seeing them, his eyes vacant. He barely ate. He didn't speak. The power I had over him had vanished, replaced by a profound, catatonic grief. I tried to rekindle our flame. I wore his favorite scent. I would come to him in the night, clad in silk. I would touch his shoulder, his arm. He would flinch away from me as if my touch were poison. It's just us now, I'd say, trying to sound triumphant. This is what you wanted. One night, he finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw nothing but a deep, dark well of self-loathing. This isn't what I wanted, he said, his voice a dead monotone. I wanted to feel something, anything. But not this. I broke my wife, Chloe. You pushed and I let you. I should have been stronger. I should have been a father. Are you feeling guilty now? I hissed, my victory turning to acid in my mouth. She's gone, and I'm still here. You chose me. He grabbed my wrists, his grip surprisingly strong. This wasn't love, he said, his eyes pleading with me to understand. It was never love. It was a sickness. It was destruction. The next morning, his suitcase was packed and waiting by the door he had walked out of. Where are you going? I asked, a genuine panic seizing me for the first time. I've been talking to a therapist online, he said, not looking at me. I'm going to a residential treatment center, a retreat. What about me? I screamed, the words tearing from my throat. You're just going to leave me here alone? He finally turned to me, and his eyes were filled with a fresh, poignant sadness I had never seen before. Chloe, you need help that I can't give you, maybe more help than anyone can. His voice broke. I've already lost my wife. I can't lose my own soul too. And with that, he walked out the same door my mother had, leaving me completely and utterly alone in the silent, cavernous house. Weeks bled into months. I called his number. It went straight to voicemail. I called my mother's old number. It had been disconnected. The dust gathered on the designer furniture. The house grew cold, the silence broken only by its own creaks and groans. I stopped wearing perfume. I stopped brushing my hair. Some mornings, the weight of the silence was so heavy I couldn't get out of bed. I, Chloe, who had conquered her entire world, was now the lonely queen of a fractured, empty kingdom. One afternoon, rummaging through his nightstand for reasons I didn't understand, I found a photograph. It was from a family vacation to a lake in Maine years ago. We were all smiling. My mother's hand was on my father's back. I was standing between them, my arms wrapped around both their waists. We looked happy, we looked whole, we looked perfect. I stared at that image of a life I had systematically detonated. I ripped it into tiny, unrecognizable pieces. No tears fell. But deep inside, in a place I didn't know existed, I felt something shatter. The house is still mine, a constant mocking reminder of my victory. It was once a sanctuary, a symbol of power. Now, it feels like a mausoleum. My father sends sporadic clinical postcards from the treatment center. They speak of progress and healing. They are polite and distant. He signs them Marcus, never Dad. I often find myself in the den, running my fingers along the leather of the couch where our secret was born. I retrace the steps of my conquest, the moves and countermoves. I ask myself if I would do it differently, if he would. The terrifying truth that settles in my bones is no. Neither of us would have stopped. That is the ugly truth we must both live with, a wall built between us for all time. You can always apply a fresh coat of paint, but you can't hide the rot seeping through from underneath. We set our own house on fire, and now we are both just lost in the smoke. Have you ever had a single choice demolish your entire world? What do you do when you get everything you ever wanted, and it costs you everything you ever had? This story is a warning, a testament to how the hunger for power can consume and destroy. Thank you for listening to the very end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more true stories, and if this story left an impact on you, press 1 in the comments below.